Exit polls in several of the primary states have shown voters' number one issue is the economy, the state of the economy. Take a look at Michigan, for example, where 92% of Republican voters in our exit poll there said they were worried about the U.S. economy. Among Democrats, it was 80%. Why is that, especially when the unemployment rate now is so relatively low, only 4.9%? According to the latest jobs report, it was around 8% when President Obama took office some 7 years ago. So let's bring in Greg Ip, as the chief economics commentator for the Wall Street Journal. Greg, unemployment relatively low right now, under 5%. Wouldn't that suggest that people are more encouraged about the economy right now? The millions of jobs that have been created, hundreds of thousands virtually in every month. The U.S. was losing about 800,000 jobs when Obama took office, 800,000 jobs a month.
Absolutely, Wolf. The total job creation record of the last 7 or 8 years has been very good. And as you say, the unemployment rate is back down to what economists would consider a full employment level. But there are two reasons why that's not filtering through to the average voter. One is that we know a lot of people have dropped out of the labor force because they retired, they went on disability insurance, they just gave up because they couldn't find work. So those people, that means the unemployment rate is a little bit understated as a result. Secondly, the wages that the people who have jobs are getting just aren't as impressive as they used to be. Wage growth in recent years has been around 2% versus 4% before the recession. And I think that feeling of not really being able to stay much ahead of inflation is really eating away at people's sense of security.
Because as they say, a lot of people have dropped out. Some have suggested the work level right now, the number of people participating in the job market, shall we say, out there, is almost at a record low. Is that true?
That is true. The labor force participation rate has dropped a lot in the last 7 or 8 years. However, it's really not the case, as some people argue, that this is entirely because it's a weak job market. A lot of that is demographic. We are a country that's getting older. So the first baby boomers began collecting Social Security in 2008. So no doubt we would have had a big drop in that number even without the recession. But it is still the case that the fact that a lot of people are not working might be contributing to that overall sort of sense that things aren't quite right out in the country.
What about home ownership? We know the disaster in 2007, 2008, when people were losing their homes in that mortgage bubble, the disaster that occurred then. What about now? What does it look like?
Well, it looks pretty discouraging, and I think that this alone perhaps speaks to some of the anxiety out there. The home ownership rate reached like a record high of 69% prior to the recession, but after the foreclosure crisis and the recession, it's now down to around 63%, which is roughly where it was in 1995. The average young family starting out in the job market today wants to start a family, buy a home, is finding it very difficult to get a mortgage, to put together the money to make a down payment, given that regulations are so much tighter. So between the weakness of income and the much greater stringency there is on people's ability to basically get what things that they used to think their parents could assume they would have at this age, I think that too undermines security. Along with the diminution of opportunities in sectors like manufacturing that used to be the source of really good paying work.
Whatever Democrats and Republican voters so far, what they disagree on a lot, but they clearly are both worried about the state of the U.S. economy right now. Good explanation, Greg. Thanks very much for joining us.
All right. Thanks for having me, Wolf.